My name is Garrain Jones, and I am a powerful force of love and freedom, inspiring bigness within myself and the world. But who am I to be so bold? Who am I to put myself out there? Because you know the things that I heard when I was a little kid? You're too small. You're too short. You're too fast. You're too loud. You sing too much. Your hair is too nappy. Don't grow it. Why do you wear those mismatched clothes? And little by little, my bigness kept getting smaller and smaller and smaller and smaller. But the one that really drove a dagger through my heart, 5 years old, at my Auntie Vet's house, in front of all the parents and the family friends, and all the kids were in front of them, and it was like this little talent show, and we were all singing and dancing, and everybody was getting cheered for. And I was like, it's my big turn. Michael Jackson's Moonwalker came on MTV, and I stood in front of everybody just knowing that I was going to get cheered for. And are you okay? Are you okay? Are you? And I was doing all the things. And one by one, everybody was like, boo, Garrain, you can't sing. You can't dance. Family and family friends. Do you know what that does to the spirit and soul of a little child? But here's my one shining light. My super drunk father, in all of whatever was going on inside of him, he goes, Gay, don't you ever tell my son what he can and cannot do. Garrain, if you love it and it makes you happy and it brings you joy, do what makes you happy. You do what you love. And I never forgot it until I forgot it. I lived in my car for 2.5 years. I was in prison for 2.5 years. And I slept couch to girl's house, to couch, where it seemed like I was numb with the emotions. Raise your hand. You don't have to have gone to prison to feel like you were trapped inside of something you didn't know how to get out. Raise your hand if you've ever experienced that before. And somebody said that you're too much, you're too big, you're too this. What happens to the child is the unworthiness turns into I'm not good enough. I'll never make it happen. So this picture right here is me pouring a syrup sandwich because that's all I could afford. $200,000 in debt, mom dying in the hospital, and all of that was the compound effect of me not living in my bigness. Raise your hand if there's a little voice inside and you know you're not in your full expression right now. Everybody in this audience and most of the people out there in Streamland. Well, I'll tell you this. There was one night at 3:43 in the morning in August 2011, and I was just like, okay, I'm tired of fighting. I don't want to fight anymore. I want to be healthy. I want to be happy. I want to be surrounded by nothing but positive people. I just want to inspire people, and I want to make a bunch of money, and I want the money to represent something that I passionately believe in. Please show me a sign. I didn't know what the sign was going to be, and then a little voice inside said, Garrain, remember what used to make you happy as a little kid? And I remembered that I loved to run. Not for the exercise, not for the abs. I just love to run because it makes me feel free. And all these ideas just come shooting in my vessel, my channel. I love visual arts. I love to wear clothes that most people don't even like to wear. I wanted to grow my hair out, even if it's nappy or coarse. But I was afraid. I was afraid. But that day, when I decided to call in my bigness, something changed. I went to the dentist, and he was like, you got to get a root canal. I was like, how is that possible? I had a root canal 12 years ago. Well, whoever originally did your root canal didn't get it all the way to the root. So you have 15 years worth of infection that is showing up on the surface. And I said, I know exactly why my life is the way that it is. I walked around and I hear people, and I've spoken on stages all over the world. They were like, oh, I have abandonment issues. My dad left, my mom left. But what I realized in that moment, that the original abandonment was me abandoning my original dream, my original love. That little kid inside, little Garrain, whose soul was squished. And I remembered, Garrain, do what makes you happy. Do what brings so much joy to your heart and your soul. I started doing those things, and a power started welling up inside of me. I started becoming calm, less insecurities, less stress. It doesn't matter how much money you make. I've seen people have a lot of money and still be poor in their spirit. And people with no money be the happiest people I know. So maybe there's something else going on inside. That picture on the left is when I was 34 years old. The picture on the right is a couple months ago. At almost 44 years old, look at my eyes. The hot air balloon doesn't leave the ground unless you release the weight. I started forgiving people. I forgave the 2 men who murdered my father. I let go of resentment, people who touched me as a little boy, because all of that was hate living in my heart. But what it was doing, it was cluttering the little voice inside that says, Garrain, do this. Do what makes you happy. Remember, you used to love to run. And the more and more I started doing those things, there was a sense of peace and a sense of freedom that nobody else could give me but myself. And I want you to think about your own life. There's some people trying to fight for freedom. Even listen to the word fight. I was trying to fight for my own freedom that I abandoned. Think about your life right now. Your work, your relationship with your spouse, your kids, and most of all, the relationship with yourself. I want you to imagine a little child going, Mom, 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 Dad, 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 Mom, listen to me, listen to me, listen to me, listen to me. What do you think the relationship would be like 20 years from now without a single acknowledgement? You don't even have to answer that question because you know there wouldn't be a relationship. There would be no emotional closure. Well, your original dream is connected to your inner child, which I believe is directly connected to source, which is your spiritual umbilical cord to heaven. And every time you listen to that little kid, there's an energy that wells up. You ever seen kids just run around all day long? Pretend, I'm not going outside the red circle. Remember the little kids, they just run around in the circle, and they run around, and they're like, yo, how can they keep playing? But as adults, it's like, oh, I'm tired. Every day around the same time. Just maybe you might be out of alignment with your most authentic and true self. And that's where the tired comes from. As I was going on my journey, I was meeting all different kinds of people. My old neighbor was 103. And I said to her, how come you don't look so old? She looked like she was late 60s. She was like, old? Age doesn't make you old. It's when you let your life beat you down. That's what makes you old. When you're in relationships that you don't want to be in and you stay in them, that's what makes you old. When you're at jobs that you don't want to be at and you just go to the job and it's crushing your soul, that's what makes you old. She was like, do you know where wrinkles come from? And I'm like, where? When you let your life beat you down, it weighs on your spirit and your soul starts to sag. And she said, that's where wrinkles come from. I was like, bars. I am not about to wait till I'm about to die to actually start living. I'm living for my truth, living for my natural expression. If a bird were to try to be an alligator, you can see how life would be difficult. Makes sense, yes? A bird and an alligator. However, a bird that doesn't even know that it's a bird uses everything that's already inside of it, and flight takes place. So what if your original dream brought you back home to yourself, to the deepest reaches of your heart. This child inside of each and every one of us, even if you're 5 and 6, I've seen the most insecure 6-year-olds because they're doing what everybody else tells them to do, and there's something in there missing. Teenagers, older people, it's the same thing. Imagine your inner child every time you feel like, oh my goodness, I used to love to dance. I used to love to sing. I used to love to do visual arts. But you haven't done it in like 20 years. But every time you watch something, track and field, any kind of dance competition, even if you always wanted to be a speaker when you were a little kid, and then you're watching this from home or in the audience, and it's like, oh, TEDx. It's like, oh, that would be nice. Let's just say that deep down inside is your inner child going, Mom, 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 Dad, 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 listen to me, listen to me. And you ignored that child for 5 years, 10 years, 15 years, some of you 50 years. What do you think the relationship would be like? Maybe, just maybe, that's what's missing. The relationship between your spiritual self and your physical self in full alignment, like the bird who's just using everything that's already inside of itself. And this is no longer me, because I remember. So I'm calling everybody else to remember the things that made you the happiest, the most joyful, that brought you the most freedom. And I introduce to you artist power as the answer. The artist is the little kid inside of all of us before life stripped away all of our powers. Your energy, your passion, your desires, your creativity. You tap back into that energy, it unlocks a power. And the same thing that's inside of all of us is the same thing that's inside of what makes the flowers grow. And the EKGs of the heart is one of the most powerful frequencies in the world. What if we used it? All of us, collectively, at the same time. Be a lot less school shootings. Be a lot more happy people. Be more business created. People would walk down the street and actually say, hi, how are you doing? And then other people would respond with, I'm doing absolutely fabulous, and mean it. Imagine that kind of world and that kind of atmosphere that we can create starting in this room. I want to say thank you for allowing me to share little Garrain on this stage. This is the real me. This is my fullest expression. This is my nappy coarse hair all the way grown out. This is my mismatched clothes. This is my slightly crooked nose. This is my fully accepted freckles. This is the real me. Now will the real you stand up, stand out, and share yourself with the world, because we're missing it from humanity. Thank you so much. Thank you so much. Thank you so much.